rededicate ourselves not only in the struggle to emancipate other territories in Africa. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent.
Welcome to today's special discussion commemorating the 79-year anniversary of the 5th Pan-African Congress held in Manchester in 1945. This landmark event marked a pivotal moment in the struggle for Africans' independence and self-determination. Pan-Africanism, as defined by our great hero, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, is the total liberation and unification of Africa under an all-African socialist government. And as an objective, it challenges colonialism, racism, and economic exploitation. The 5th Pan-African Congress, attended by great freedom fighters like our very own Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, George Padmore, and many more, created a condition to develop an independent African ideology, contributing towards the achievement of a continental government. Today, we are honored with great revolutionary thinkers and activists coming to share their insights on the relevance of Pan-Africanism in today's world. Our discussion will explore balkanization, resource control, Pan-Africanism today, and revolutionary Pan-Africanism. So, join me, let's dive into the world of Pan-Africanism, honoring the legacy of the 5th Pan-African Congress and its visionary leaders. So, on our left, we have Comrade Papaya Okatechi, a proud member of the Nkrumahist Cadres. And we have Comrade Amudani Gariba, a proud member of the Nkrumahist Circle. We have Comrade Imole Oyelami, a proud member of the Nkrumahist Cadres, and Comrade Reki Dawute, a proud member of the Nkrumahist Cycle and the Nkrumahist Circle. And I am Kwejaki, the host, a proud member of the Nkrumahist Cycle and the Nkrumahist Circle. As we commence, we are going to start on the attack on balkanization. So we invite Comrade Papaya, a member of the caucus, to talk to us on the attack on balkanization.
Okay, thank you, Comrade, for the time and opportunity given to me, to talk about, balkanization in Africa. First of all, we should note that, or let me put on record that balkanization is one of the remnants of colonialism. It's one of the remnants of colonialism. And balkanization was initiated in the Berlin Conference. And in that conference, no African was there. So the balkanization we see in Africa is not the making of Africans. We have nothing to do with it. It's a colonial legacy that the colonialists left for us. But it's unfortunate that African leaders today are still holding on to these artificial borders that was created by European imperialism. And what are some of the key outcomes of this balkanization? Comrade, this have created divisions in Africa. And it has created so much problem for us that, I think if you cast our mind back 2 or 3 years back in South Africa, we have what they call in term xenophobic. Why is African killing other Africans in South Africa? Africans are not foreigners in any part of the continent. We are seeing ourselves as foreigners because of balkanization, because European powers came and divided us for us to think that we are different people. Recently, we saw what happened, in West Africa. We have had military takeovers in West Africa, and ECOWAS is, ganging up to go and attack these Africans, forgetting that the ethnic cities that have been divided are living across all these West African countries. So if ECOWAS is making a decision to go and attack these countries, then who are they going to kill? So those ethnicities in these African countries, they are spread across. We are going to kill ourselves because we have been divided by colonial powers. And it's so unfortunate that these African leaders are still holding on to it. Moreover, these boundaries is not creating any I mean, it's not in our interest. Look at what happened in Libya some few years ago. NATO bombing and invaded Libya and killed Muammar al-Gaddafi. It's all because of balkanization that we are seeing today. And no African leader, as we speak now, is safe. No African leader is we speak now as is safe. So even for them, even to to protect even their own leadership and to safeguard it, there's the need for them to forgo about this balkanization and unite the continent. That's even going to even save them. So for me, comrade, I think that the balkanization has caused so much devastating effect on us than it have done any good to us. And moreover, too, it has created so many border disputes in Africa. So many border disputes. Ghana and Ivory Coast nearly went into some war because of the oil fields. But if there was no balkanization in Africa, the oil there is for Africans. It's not for only Ghanaians. It's for Africans. So there's no need to fight over resources. So this border dispute is cut across. And we should not forget that aside for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah reminds us that if we don't unite, these European powers are going to stand behind the screen and push vicious ways for us to cut each other's throat. So balkanization in Africa, they are taking advantage of it. And because our leaders are micronationalists and they don't have any sense and agency of uniting the continent, and they're thinking that maintaining these territorial boundaries is what is going to preserve their presidency and their sovereignty, it's not true. And we have seen they themselves saw what happened to Gaddafi in Libya and other leaders across the continent. So I think that for balkanization, in Africa, it has caused so much disruption on the continent. It have caused some impact on our cultural and economic landscape and our political landscape. It has caused so many damages to all these as a people. So as revolutionaries, we are against balkanization in Africa, and we are calling for a united front, for Africa, so that Africans we can also stand up that we are also people of ourselves and determine our own policies and programs for ourselves for the development of Africa.
Thank you very much. I think that was quite insightful. So moving on, we'll call on our comrade Nweke Daute to talk to us about resource control.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about resource control in Africa. Yes, I think Africa needs to control its resources. And the reason being that to create social amenities for the people. When we look at Ghana here, for example, we see that a lot of there are schools on the streets. There are mothers who give birth to babies on the floor because there are no adequate beds for mothers to give birth on. So there is a need for Africa to control its resources and also to raise the standard of living of the people, to help take children from the streets. When you go to the streets, you see children begging. You see kaya women have to carry things for people in order to get money for their daily bread. So Africa needs to control her resources in order to take these people out of the streets, to use the resources to industrialize Africa, so to create jobs for proper jobs, professional jobs for people to do in Africa, and also to develop more infrastructure in Africa. Infrastructure in the sense that there will be more roads, there will be more railway lines in Africa, so that moving in Africa will be much easier. When you take Ghana here, for example, it will take a whole long time for someone to move here in the central region to northern region. It will take like 4 days. With the railway system, a good railway network, it will take like 4 hours for people to move in and out throughout Africa. And also there is a need for Africa to there is a need for Africa to control its resources, her resources, in order to protect her land and her environment. Because when you look at Ghana today, you see Galamsey is destroying our water bodies, Galamsey is destroying our lands, Galamsey is doing a whole harm and do. And also the revenues coming from Galamsey is going to individual people's pockets. It's not serving the interests of the people, of the majority of the people. And also US and European capitalist companies and also the indigenous bourgeoisie are the ones who are gaining more from the resources than the majority of the people. And also, how can Africa gain control of of her resources? Africa can get control of her resources by first uniting the whole continent under one government, and then from there educate the people politically. Is to be conscious of their class as a people, to be conscious of their friends, to be conscious of their enemies politically, and also to apply scientific socialism as our economic system. Yes. And this will help a smooth transition into industrialization, whereby there will be more industries throughout Africa. People will not have to travel through the desert to go and seek greener pastures outside Africa and uh, develop foreign countries while they leave their continent, the African continent underdeveloped. So industrialization will help develop the continent. And also we need to nationalize the resources, nationalize it in such a way that it will be in the hands of the continental government. And anybody who needs to get any access to the resources will have to come through the government, and the government will manage it in such a way that it will serve the interests of the people and not uh, indigenous bourgeoisie's own personal interests or few people's the few, but it will serve the interests of the majority of the people. And also, I think that's it.
Thank you very much. I think having control of our resources is very relevant in achieving Pan-Africanism. And thank you because this information is quite insightful. I'll come back to you for a very relevant question. So moving on, I'll call on Comrade Amudani Gariba to share to us his insight on Pan-Africanism today.
Yeah, so Pan-Africanism today is a very loaded topic. It's probably the title for a 500-page book. And if we are to do a proper justice to it, we might have to run this discussion as a semester course at the university. But I'll try to be brief here.
Okay.
You know, having been a student of Pan-Africanism, a student of Nkrumahist, I've made this observation. And this observation is that the more time passes, the more it becomes clearer that Africa, in its present state, needs Pan-Africanism to survive. At least when you look at the global scheme of things and geopolitics, we need Pan-Africanism to survive. And again, the more time passes, the more it becomes difficult for us to achieve Pan-Africanism. And I will explain. And I think I would bring a bit of history here. Okay. If you read Kwame Nkrumah's book, Towards Colonial Freedom, you could see, I have the sense that Kwame Nkrumah saw this problem from the onset. Because when he was coming back from England, I guess, when he was invited from England to come to Ghana to take up the role as the Secretary General of the UGCC,
yeah,
he had in mind of fighting for independence for West Africa. Already he was involved in the West African Student Union. So in his mind, we need to tackle the struggle for independence, not from a balkanized point of view, but from, probably a continental point of view. But it was probably more tactical, more effective for him to move regionally before continentally. But of course, ultimately, his design was that having achieved independence for West Africa, then he would move forward for the total unification of the country, of the continent. This shows that Kwame Nkrumah really saw the problem, and in fact, he also acknowledged the problem of time making Pan-Africanism difficult. And how is this? Ghana got independence in 1957.
Yes.
Just a year later, he was calling for conference of all African people, and this conference was aimed at bringing liberation movements, liberation movement basically together on the table so that he can put to them the ideals of Pan-African, so that in the event that they achieve independence, then the transition into a continental union government would be smooth. He didn't relax there. We saw him, taking a lead role in the formation of the Casablanca groups and what have you. So even though ultimately Africa couldn't unite through the efforts of Kwame Nkrumah, we saw him making great strides in 1964, calling for a vote for the establishment of an African government, and then missing out by 2 votes, and intending to call for another vote in 1966. Unfortunately, he wasn't the leader of government long enough to see that come to fruition. So this is the existential problem of Pan-Africanism today. The more we wait, the more it becomes difficult. But the more we wait, the more it becomes clearer for us that we need Pan-Africanism to survive as a people. And it is sad that today the African Union, the organization whose precursor was the Organization of African Unity, founded by Kwame Nkrumah and his colleagues in Addis Ababa, today is practically dead. So long as the true ideals of Pan-Africanism is concerned, the organization is practically dead. And you find that largely its operations, just like peacekeeping missions and what have you, is being funded by the European Union and other foreign donors. And like the saying goes, he who pays the piper calls for the tune. Those who are funding the AU are rather calling for its programs and giving its ideological directions. That is why the AU would come and propose to us Agenda 2063, which means that Africa should become not even united. They are not even proposing a continental government. They are proposing a more integrated Africa by 1963, by which time all of them are dead. So when you look at Africa, you look at the problems of Africa. If I could itemize it, these are problems whether in Ghana or in Zimbabwe or in Morocco or in Cape Verde. These are problems that African unity is going to, be a lasting solution for, not window dressing. A lasting solution. You look at civil war. Currently, as we have a civil war going on in the Sudan. You look at security issues of Islamic insurgency in Boko Haram in Nigeria and some part of Cameroon, northern Mozambique, some part of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. These are security issues that if Africa had one standing military command, would have been able to deal with once and for all. Problems of lack of coordination among African countries are what is driving the fight against radicalization and security issues in Africa. Because Nigerian government might be chasing Boko Haram and then they run into Cameroon, but there is poor security coordination between these 2 countries. This serves as a challenge for them. You look at the invasion of African territory, the invasion of Libya, by U.S. NATO forces, the invasion of Ivory Coast in 2011 by French forces, the continuous, the continuous invasion of African soil by France in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. I'm very proud that today there has been change of government in these countries that is trying to change the agenda and drive home ideals of Pan-Africanism, at least in these 3 countries. We have the issues of climate change. You see how the Sahara is decimating, African lives, because of climate change. But who says we cannot green the Sahara? China is greening its desert. What affords China to be able to green its desert is by the virtue that they are more or less like a continental union. They have 1.4 billion people. Pooling all these resources behind them can make them achieve anything they want to achieve. If Africa is united, we can green the Sahara and make it the agricultural basket of not even Africa, the whole of the world. We have the energy crisis. In Ghana, there's energy crisis. In South Africa, there's energy crisis, and where have you? But we have so much energy potentials. We have uranium. You have the great river in Congo that can alone, through hydropower, power the whole of Africa. But because of lack of resources, lack of coordination, we are not able to develop this potential to solve this problem. You know, we have unemployment crisis, you know, African people crossing the Sahara, you know, braving the Mediterranean Ocean or sea to enter Europe for greener pastures. I mean, if Africa unites, there's going to be abundance of resources, the abundance of economic initiatives that will create sustainable job for this teeming youth to stay in Ghana, in Africa. And you see, the lack of voice on the international stage. Africa as a continent does not have any voice on the international stage, you know, because we are not even on the Security Council. You know, but the black race is not on the Security Council. This would be rectified immediately. Africa unites, you know. And then, of course, the issue of racism. Everywhere you go in the world, Africans are not respected. We are not respected because we are balkanized, like my colleague said. We are balkanized with no power, no say, and anywhere where injustice is meted out on an African, there is no repercussion. There is no consequences. But if Africa is united, such nonsense, excuse my language, but such nonsense is going to stop. So I think I would end here so that another.
Wow. Well, I showed you will be learning. So there's more to come. So at stand now, let's invite Comrade Mole Oyelami to talk to us on revolutionary Pan-Africanism.
Thank you, Comrade Zuta. I would like to talk about the three phases of Pan-Africanism, being the evolutionary stage, the organizational stage, and the revolutionary stage of Pan-Africanism. The evolutionary stage was the human social evolutionary process that all human beings go through, from smaller to larger social aggregates, from the family to the clan, to the tribe, to kingdoms and empires. And Africa would have united through the evolutionary process if it had not been interrupted by imperialism in the form of slavery and colonization. During the evolutionary stage, Africa developed great empires where smaller clans, tribes, kingdoms were united over vast territories under emperors. This is everybody knows about the Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, Mutapa in Southeast Africa, and Kemet in Northeast Africa. But during these stages of Africa's development of Pan-Africanism, we had feudalism that emerged within such system, where you had elites, royals, and the masses being the commoners. Now, this system created conditions where European imperialism was able to align with certain feudal elements for their military interests in order to slave raid, the masses of people, causing a mass dislocation, causing internal violence and confusion, and ultimately resulting in the military weakness of those great African kingdoms and empires, and enabling European imperialism to ultimately conquer Africa with an all-out invasion from what my comrade just mentioned, from an organized Berlin conference of European powers to invade Africa and outmaneuver African leadership at the time and colonize the continent and balkanize the continent. And so in order to defeat that balkanization and colonization, the Fifth Pan-African Congress, which we are commemorating, was very pivotal in the defeat of colonial rule at that time in the 1940s and 50s. And so that movement came out of organizational Pan-Africanism, starting with the first Pan-Africanist Congress in 1900 with Du Bois, Casely Hayford, and Sylvester Williams, and then leading to the Fifth Pan-African Congress in 1945 in Manchester. Now, they called for an all-out assault on colonialism. And so with that assault, Africa was able to defeat colonialism. But when that struggle took place, the African leadership saw, like Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré and Nasser, that now we need to apply class struggle. And so, because the indigenous bourgeoisie elites in Africa were in alignment with our enemy, which was European imperialism. And so class struggle had to be applied in order to make sure that that liberation of Africa was not only going to benefit a few elites at the top, but is going to benefit the masses of our people. And so class struggle, and like our comrade mentioned, scientific socialism became component parts of the Pan-African Revolution. And so with that, also revolutionary ideology from our own culture, like Nkrumahist, like Touréism, came into effect in order to guide Pan-Africanism to achieve an all-African socialist government. And so revolutionary Pan-Africanism emerged from organizational Pan-Africanism, where we have revolutionary Pan-African states, like Ghana in 1960, putting the surrender of sovereignty to a union of African states and territories in its constitution, with Tunisia, with Guinea, with Egypt following suit to put that article in their constitutions. And so revolutionary Pan-Africanism, like our comrade Amadani mentioned about, was calling for all African Peoples Conference to bring the revolutionary movements together. The first, the Union of African States, which some people call the Ghana, Guinea, Mali Union. And so the only Pan-Africanism that is relevant today is revolutionary Pan-Africanism. Because any Pan-Africanism that is going to allow European imperialism to keep control over our gold, our diamonds, our lithium, our bauxite, our manganese, our oil is bogus and not going to serve the interests of the African people and the African nation. But today, Pan-Africanism means that we have to form a continental government. And that government has to have the power to make policy, to take, like we said, nationalization, like Papayel said, nationalization, to nationalize our resources, to nationalize all the resources of Africa, from Cape to Cairo, from Morocco to Madagascar, where no resources in Africa will be outside the sovereignty of the African government, which is the manifestation of the will of the African people. And so Pan-Africanism must be revolutionary. It has to be revolutionary. And it's going to be revolutionary in order to make up for the lost time from the slave trade and colonization. Thank you.
That was a powerful message. Thank you, comrades. And thank you all, comrades, for this insightful presentation. And moving on, because you're intellectuals, we want to know more, because this information you guys are giving us is very interesting. So I'll come back to my comrade Papaya. You talked on balkanization. So I think I and my audience would like to know, why do you think we need a united front to fight against balkanization?
Okay, so let me start by let me paraphrase a quote by Osadifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He was telling African leaders that they themselves as leaders have to realize that the salvation of Africa lies in unity. When Nkrumah came to Ghana, think Ghana was like in tribal states. The territory was in tribal states. So what did Osadifo do? He went around, and talked to the people and united all these, tribal states. And when they were united, what happens? We gave a blow to colonialism. We defeated colonialism, and Ghana gained independence. So if some people came together, or tribal states came together to form a nation, and then defeated colonialism, this implies that, or the inference is that, if the continent too, all these states on the continent also unite, and form one bloc, it is easy for us to defeat balkanization. in Africa. I think there are some examples of, people who have united, and we saw what happened after the unity. So when Africa is able to unite, not only we are defeating balkanization, it means that we are calling for the unity of our resources. We are calling for the unity to unite or integrate all of the resources on the continent and have one policy on the resources. We are also calling for the unity of the people of Africa. We are calling for the unity of Africa, and then we are also African. We are one people. As Africans, we are one people. And also because the whole thing is centered on the people's unity and their development as Africans. Africans, we also have our right for our unity. We have unity is our right as Africans. So we must insist on this right for our unity. So if leaders of Africa is not going to unite us, then the unity must start from the people. We must start the unity of Africa from the people. And when Africa is united, then Africa, we also have the power to make decisions and policies that is going to serve our own interests and the interests of our people, and for their development as well. So I think that if Africa form a united bloc, then we are going to defeat imperialism as well. The enemy of Africa. We're going to defeat imperialism. And then that's when Africans are going to start breathing the air of freedom and total liberation of the continent. And because Africa, we have suffered so much from imperialist oppression and exploitation. For how long are we going to continue to bear this thing continue? Look at our continent, look at our people, look at the conditions of African people. It's very bad. Aside before Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said that, no, it's the people that are poor, but not the continent. People are coming outside Africa to come and enrich themselves from Africa. No, we Africans, we have to enrich ourselves from our resources. It belongs to us. It's us. We have to own it. We have to control it. So when we are calling for this, united front, this is what we want to do as people. It's our right to unite, and with our unity, we are going to take control of the continent, make our policies and decisions for the interests of ourselves and for our development as a people.
Thank you very much. As Osage Dr. Kwame Nkrumah himself said, united we stand, divided we fall. So I strongly back your idea on this united front. Okay, so we'll move on to our beautiful comrade Miki Dauti. To tell us, she talked about resource control, and I want to know, as woman to woman, what do you think having control of our resources as a continent, how beneficial will it be to our African women?
Should Africa control her resources, it will help the continental government create and implement policies in the interest of women and children. When you take a workplace, for example, when a woman gives birth, the woman is given only 3 months to take care of the baby, and after 3 months has to come back to work and leave the baby with people at home. And that doesn't help for the development of the baby and also the health of the mother and both the baby. So if Africa is able to control her resources, then the continental government will put measures in place to make sure that women will be given adequate or ample time to be able to take care of their babies and also be paid at the same time. Then maybe, let's say, for about 3 years for the child to fully develop before the woman will resume her work. So I think Africa taking control of her resources will help the continental government put measures in place for women to also benefit. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think what you are saying is very evident if we go back and look into the history of Libya when Gaddafi was still there. Which was true that women who were married, who were pregnant, were given money.
Yeah.
Even from his book, The Green Book, it talked about how women are very important, and we could see how Africans were moving to Libya because of that condition, just because they were having control over their resources. So having control over our resources is going to be so beneficial to African women, because imagine getting pregnant and the government is paying you. Like everybody will start getting pregnant. I wish I was there. By this time I would have having 4 children, or to say like 5. So I think that it's very relevant for African government to see the importance of controlling our resources, because it goes a long way to benefit everybody, particularly with the women that we need to take care of babies at home. Thank you very much, comrade. I think that was quite insightful. So we'll move on to our comrade Amodani. He talked about Pan-Africanism today, and based on all that he said, I have a couple of questions to ask him. And the first one I want to require from him is, looking at Africa, almost every African country in the world is being controlled by neo-colonialists. How can we achieve Pan-Africanism if we have neo-colonial governments all over Africa?
Yeah, so I think first of all, the question about relying on current African governments to unite Africa is out of the way, because I think African governments from 1963, when the OAU was formed, has given us every indication that they are not interested in uniting the continent. And I think it's about time that African people take their destinies into their own hands and push for Pan-Africanism. And how would they do this? I think one, we need to execute a grassroots-led approach to Pan-Africanism. And what I see this being done by Kwame Nkrumah with the All African People's Conference that's called 1958. And I see that 2024, Africans Rising, this Pan-African organization, is also being seen with their All African People's Assembly that they convened here in Accra. I think that is one of the ways to go. We need to send the message to the people on the ground rather than relying on our presidents and our political leaders to do it at the top. Having said that, too, I think we need to also have an eye for the long term, because I don't think Pan-Africanism can be achieved in the short term. Okay. And so we need to make it durable, we need to make it sustainable. And in doing so, we need to prioritize education. And so I remember 2014 or so, thereabouts, there was a positive education coalition that sent a petition to the Ministry of Education of Ghana to expunge the vilification of Kwame Nkrumah from our textbook. I think that we can also, champion the cause of introducing Pan-African education in the curricula of Ghana and every African country. And I think this is something we can immediately do, and have Ministry of Education across the continent implement Pan-African curricula for our children. And this is important because when we start inculcating Pan-African values into our children from the early age, we grow up to appreciate it better, and they'll be more likely to embrace the idea of Pan-Africanism than our generation and the generation before us. Also, the thing about organizing in Africa is that there is funding. It's almost a certainty that there is funding for all kinds of neo-colonial activities, but there is no funding, or when it comes to funding, it's very difficult for revolutionary activities. And so that is one of the challenges. So I think in our quest to popularize Pan-Africanism at the grassroots, we might face financial challenges. Okay. And this calls for strategies to surmount this challenge, maybe crowdfunding, and I think the orientation of the everyday African has been such that we tend not to give our widow's mite to revolutionary movements, revolutionary activities. We rather tend to give it to maybe the church, religious, and neo-colonial political establishment. And so we need to have that kind of mind change, mindset change. And also, I think that the marriage between repatriation and repatriation of Africans born in the diaspora, the marriage between repatriation and Pan-African movement on the continent, is something that will naturally advance the cause of Pan-Africanism. I think we can see this with the 5th Pan-African Congress, the Congress that we are obviously commemorating here, where revolutionary Pan-African thinkers of the diaspora met with revolutionary, anti-colonial organizers on the ground here in Africa. And we saw how that blossomed into, the independence of Africa. I believe that we should, advocate for more repatriation of our Africans, because when they come, they are in a new mindset, and that mindset would automatically gravitate them towards Pan-African, goals. And I believe that in terms of finance, they are in a much better position than us, and I think that will also help to close the financial gap, needed to push the Pan African movement forward. So I think these are some of the things that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the second question I want to ask you, what do you think is the free or African continental free trade prospect on Pan-Africanism? What do you think is their take on Pan-Africanism?
Yes, I'll be brief here. I think I described the All African Free Trade Area, the EFCFTA, as the right step in the wrong direction. That's how I see it.
Okay.
I think one is a neo-colonial setup, and designed on neo-colonial economic ideals such as neoliberalism, opening our borders for goods but not people.
Okay.
Opening our borders for goods. And when you look at the economic setup of almost every African country, the little industries we have are not controlled by indigenous people. They are controlled by Indians, by Lebanese, by Chinese, by Europeans, multinational corporations. So if we open our borders for this kind of economic initiative, what we are saying is that we are basically maximizing the profits of people who are not from Africa. But again, I think it holds the potential, on the brighter side, it holds the potential for people-to-people coordination. I doubt how you can move goods without some people. There's going to be some people moving with the goods. And I think the more Nigerians, Cameroonians, Congolese are interacting through the EFCFTA channel, the more they get to know each other, the more they get to break the stereotypes about each other, and the more they begin to embrace each other. So I think even though it's a new colonial setup, there is still some avenue for the how do I call it, for the advancement of Pan-Africanism, however small it is.
Okay, thank you very much. I think these answers, I think me and my audience, we are very satisfied. I like the part where you talk about having or inculcating Pan-Africanism in our textbooks, where we greet our young ones with what's an independent ideology, what uniting Africa is. So I think that is very relevant. If our African leaders are listening, they could take note of that. So I'll move on to our comrade Imole Oyelami. We talked on revolutionary Pan-Africanism, which was quite insightful. So I want to ask you, when it comes to the issue of Pan-Africanism, is it an issue of race or an issue of national unity?
I would say that it's both. But actually, our ideology is Nkrumahist, and Nkrumahist has objectives, to achieve. Those objectives are nationalism, Pan-Africanism, and socialism. And so when we talk about Pan-Africanism, we're talking about unifying the continent of Africa, the landmass of Africa, and the people of Africa. And so we don't want to exacerbate divisions within Africa. We rather want to unite the people in the territory of Africa. And those who seek to divide Africans, then those are the forces of reaction that we have to target. But those who want to contribute to the unification of Africa, then we see them as comrades in our struggle to achieve Pan-Africanism. I'll give an example. If you look at North Africa, for example, we have the meeting of the forces, the states that were very serious about unifying Africa and voting in the Organization of African Unity for a continental government for Africa in '65. Some of those countries are considered Arab countries, Tunisia, Algeria under Ben Bella, and Egypt under Nasser, So they were serious about voting to unite all of the countries of Africa under a continental government, you know. And so if we say, well, we're taking a racial approach and only blacks are part of the unity, then what about those Arabs who are interested in unifying the continent of Africa? And furthermore, if we're able to unite the continent of Africa peacefully with the North Africans, then the blacks are the majority. Who's going to take power? So we can peacefully take power over the entire continent and all its resources and the military forces and incorporate the North African Arabs into that unity if they're willing to do that. And some of them have demonstrated, like Gaddafi, that they're willing to do that. So why should we fight them? And they're fighting imperialism, they're fighting neo-colonialism, and they're fighting Zionism, just like we're fighting imperialism, neo-colonialism, and Zionism. And then we're going to fight against the North African Arabs as well, when they're ready to unite the continent under the majority of the people are black, and we would be the ones controlling the continent. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So uniting Africa is uniting the land of Africa and all the people of Africa. And if they're willing to show allegiance to the African majority, then I have no problem with, you know, them being a part of Africans, like Gaddafi, like Ben Bella, like Nasser, you know. And so Sobukwe even said it very well. He was anti-racialism. Anybody, we're not looking at, you know, the race, we're looking at your allegiance. We're looking at your work. We're looking at your ideology. And then what are you going to do in the interest of the African majority, the working masses of the people? Are you fighting for them and their interest? Are you fighting against them? Sekou Touré said the people's class and the anti-people's class. So are you with the people of Africa fighting for us to have water, fighting for us to have light, fighting for us to have housing, fighting for us to have shelter, fighting for our women, like our sister pointed out? Are you fighting for the youth of Africa to have a brighter future, to manifest all of our potential? Is that what you're for? So if you're an Arab or what have you, then, you know, fine. You know, then you could be a part of us. Sekou Touré said Castro is more my brother than Mobutu. Castro contributed soldiers for the fight of Angola against white racist apartheid South Africa, and specialists to help those in Guinea-Bissau with Amilcar Cabral fight against the Portuguese. And Mobutu, so we can't have a racial, you know, a line on Pan-Africanism when we have, you know, so we have the black is African, like Kufuor, like Mobutu, that's reactionary, working for imperialism, you know, against the people. And so having a racial analysis and saying that, oh, because of the color of somebody's skin makes them, you know, a part of Pan-Africanism. And somebody like Gaddafi, because he has an Arab background and say he's excluded, it doesn't make any sense. It's not revolutionary to take such a position.
Wow. Thank you very much. I think this your insightful message just answered the second question I was about to ask you, which was how you confront the issue of North Africans as a revolutionary. So I think that
I can give a brief answer.
Okay.
My comrade said,
Okay.
Yeah. I think the question of North Africa was answered by Kwame Nkrumah at the first conference of independent African states, when he said, if the Sahara once divided us, now it unites us. And an injury to one is an injury to all of us. Hands off Africa. Africa must be free.
Thank you very much, comrade, for this wonderful presentation. So from what he said, if you want to be part of Pan-Africanism, then you need to join an organization to fight for the unity of Africa. Thank you very much. So for more education, for more insight, you can follow NC everywhere on all the social media handles. That is Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you very much.
I don't sing song for great African men. I don't sing song for great African men. Now Osaje for Kwame Nkrumah be the greatest one. I don't sing song for great African men. I ask many African young people today. Them don't know nothing about it. Kwame Nkrumah, don't know Nkrumah. Yeah, leaders not fide. Yeah, presidents not fide. African personality go show. Prosperity go the flow. African pride go they shine.